Welcome to Dadograms. I'm Jason M. Garrett, and we're diving into a topic that may spin some of you up. I'll be referencing some political figures, but it's a message that's important for all of you to hear. But before we dive in, I want to start from a very unusual place. Bear with me here. You'll be learning something that may change you. So fair warning. I want to step back into the 1990s and introduce to you Star Trek: The Next Generation. Now, for me and my generation of young men and women, this TV series was formative. I think many of us see the captain of the Starship Enterprise in this series, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, as the absolute best example of leadership. Someone who shaped my leadership style as a Navy midshipman and as a junior officer. He was a clear and effective communicator, reliable, steadfast, adaptable, decisive, all the things I have ever tried to be throughout my career and even now. And all the things I expect a good leader to be. And in this series, there was an android named Data. And Data is what I really want to focus on at this time. Data was a one-of-a-kind android who could outperform any human being. But there was an issue. He was built with no emotions, and this made him very hard to relate to people and for people to relate to him and so forth. Now, in a later episode, he ended up getting an upgrade. He ended up getting an emotion chip installed, and that's where all the problems began. Data did not know how to manage his emotions. So in a crisis, when his leadership, logical skills, all that kind of stuff were most needed, he would completely lose control, crying hysterically or laughing inappropriately, and finally, Captain Picard, the consummate leader, would have to step in and decisively order Data to turn off his emotion chip. Suddenly, Data could function. He could lead. He could use his skills to win. So that's what I want to encourage each and every one of you to do in this datagram. Turn off your emotion chips. Because I am going to be talking about some political folks that seem to get people very, very spun up. But I'm not talking just about them. I'm talking about leadership in the military, in politics, and at home with you. Okay? All right. So here we go. In the military, we have a phrase that is essentially a way of life. It's leadership by example. And in uniform, it's not just a nice phrase, it's a survival tactic. We lead by example. We hold ourselves to extremely high standards. Because we have to. If our leaders lie, cheat, steal, sleep around, abuse people, or anything like that, and nothing happens, then we're essentially letting everybody else know, hey, this is the way we do it. And pretty soon we lose good order and discipline. And when that breaks down, we lose our ability to fight and win. That's why in the military, when a leader screws up, especially if it's an ethical failure, they get relieved. I mean fired, gone, no debate, no excuses, no talking heads endlessly spinning it. They're just gone. It's not personal, it's professional. Because the mission matters more than any man or woman. And that's why we do it. So here's a question to consider. Why don't we demand the same from our civilian leaders who are quite literally directing the fate of our entire nation? I've thought about that, and I suppose it's because it's hard to get the masses to unify together to do anything like come out to vote once every 2 to 4 years between two really bad candidates, much less hold our leadership accountable for all their wrongdoings. But there's another saying that we live by in the Navy that you should know. It's this: what you walk past, you condone. For leaders in the military, if you see someone cutting corners or not living up to the actual standards and you just pass it up, congratulations. You've just set the new standard. And that's exactly what we're doing in America right now as we walk past or applaud leaders whose behavior wouldn't survive a single week in uniform. Let's take a look at this mess we call American politics. Now remember, emotion chips off here. Just listen to what I'm saying. Don't get all spun up because I'm talking about one side or the other. I'm an equal opportunity hitter on this one. I'm going to be hitting all sides, so just stand by with me on that. Let's start with our president, Donald Trump, as the example of leadership that he is teaching an entire generation. Donald Trump's brand has been built on winning. He claimed elite business genius, but that's not the reality. If anything, he's a ruthless thug that beats down others to rise to the top. I'm not going to go into the endless details of his malfeasance, but I want to simply ask that you listen to all the things that he's ever been accused of. And if even just the smallest piece of those were ever true and he was in the uniform of a military officer, he would have been investigated and he would likely have been held accountable. He most certainly would not have been reelected for yet another go at it. Yet despite it all, he continues on. Some Americans call his methods smart, showing incredible business savvy, and even adapt his methods because they believe that's the way businesses should be run. After all, if the president can do it, he sets precedent by example. That's the way it works. And I'm warning you all, that's the way it works. And we as a nation are going that way because he's leading us all by example. But there's so much more to learn from him than just vicious business tactics. Let's take a look at the public brawl between two billionaires in early June 2025. With everyone watching and learning, we see Trump and Elon Musk going at it. It reminds me of the good old days when you turn on television and you could get all the entertainment you wanted from a Jerry Springer show. As these two verbally push and shove each other around on the world stage in the most disgraceful manner I could possibly imagine. Buddies one week, enemies the next, public insults, ego-driven drama, social media meltdowns. These are not leaders acting with dignity and respect. But for God's sakes, that's what their elevated positions should require. Dignity, respect, statesmanship. If you're in leadership positions of those levels and you are bringing drama into the world around you, you are doing wrong. They're leading by example. Like it or not, they are showing us all how it's done here in America and the world. And I think that they've actually forgotten how truly influential they are to all of us and how their pettiness, which is not the norm, will eventually become normal. They're showing the public that leadership means self-promotion, manipulation, and drama. That corruption is clever, that the loudest person in the room certainly must be the strongest. And far too many people, especially our kids, are watching this and learning it. Now, if your emotion chip is starting to arc and spark and get the best of you, well, don't worry. I'm going to flip the aisle now. Remember Nancy Pelosi? Let's talk about her leadership by example. Let's talk about her net worth and her husband's. It exploded during her time in Congress. Why? Because of stock trades that just so happened to perfectly align with upcoming legislation. Now, to be clear, there's no proof that she broke the law or shared classified information. But when you're the Speaker of the House and your spouse makes trades that always seem to win huge, this looks bad. And in leadership, appearance matters. Perception is reality. One of your responsibilities in public office is to avoid impropriety and to avoid the appearance of it. I believe personally that while she was the Speaker of the House, he should not have been allowed to trade at all, even if that was his business, just because of the appearance of impropriety. It's that important. What I am suggesting is an example of the true sacrifice that public office in the United States of America should demand. The only business of politicians is America's business, not their own, not their families, not their brands, only America's business. That's the way we do it in the military. That's the way our politicians need to be doing it as well. Now, this issue has been addressed in the past. After Watergate, where President Nixon resigned in disgrace following a criminal investigation for his abuse of power and obstruction of justice, Congress passed the Ethics in Government Act of 1978. It was meant to restore public trust that required federal officials, including members of Congress, to publicly disclose their finances. It also established the Office of Government Ethics and set new rules around conflict of interest. Now, I can actually remember my mom talking to me about this as a little boy in the early 1980s, and she had told me back then that they had made a rule that the president had to put their assets and their businesses into a blind trust. That's where a third party manages their investments independently so that the president doesn't know what they own and therefore can't let their business interests influence their decisions on behalf of our nation. It's a great tool to avoid conflicts of interest. That was apparently a common belief by Americans because of that legislation of 1978. And that's the way I have thought it was this entire time, but apparently that's not the case at all. Because there's a catch. While the act increases transparency, It didn't go as far as requiring a blind trust. Lawmakers were allowed, but not required, to place their assets into a blind trust. Not surprisingly, though, most members of Congress don't do it. Instead, they're allowed to buy and sell individual stocks, even companies they help regulate, so long as they file a disclosure afterwards. That's it. So technically legal, but ethically, I think, wrong. It's just corruption with a paper trail, as it turns out. And how about presidents? Have any of them actually used blind trusts to put their investments and their businesses in? Yes, they do, actually. Most of them, at least. Starting with Lyndon B. Johnson, heck, even Jimmy Carter completely sold off his peanut farm. And the next presidents all put their investments into blind trusts too, including Presidents Reagan, both Bushes, Clinton. But as it turns out, there were two presidents that have not. Do you know who they are? As it turns out, President Obama didn't. But that's kind of understandable, as he didn't own any businesses and he only was invested in the stock market with the S&P 500, so I guess not a big deal there. And of course, President Trump didn't during either term. Anyway, ethics and morals with our politicians is questionable, to say the least. They seem to take the job to promote themselves and to make themselves powerful and rich. And that's contrary to what the service to our nation should be. It's wrong, yet they continue to serve. Now contrast that with the military. We have officers disciplined and demoted all the time. Even retired admirals have had their rank reduced or honors revoked years after leaving service due to misconduct tied to their time in uniform. We have this thing called the Fat Leonard scandal still going on right now. It's been going on for more than a decade, where a defense contractor from Malaysia bribed dozens of Navy officers with gifts, trips, prostitutes, and other favors, and every one of them is being held accountable. We often have commanding officers relieved for fostering a toxic command climate where they belittle or berate their own crews, even becoming physically aggressive. They get the axe. We've had decorated Marines fired for a single DUI. We don't tolerate any of that stuff. When it is found out, it is dealt with, and it is dealt with decisively. You do not get a pass because of your rank. You don't get a pass because of your popularity. You lead right, or you get replaced. Period. Yet in civilian government, we reward bad behavior with attention, applause, and, well, re-election. And here's where it becomes truly dangerous. Our children are watching. They're learning what leadership looks like from TikTok, YouTube, the cable news. They see adults cheer for leaders who dodge accountability, abuse power, and enrich themselves. And they are starting to realize that that is actually what winning looks like. And folks, that is poison in the water supply. So what do we do about it? We start with ourselves. We lead in our homes. We hold ourselves to higher standards, better standards than those we see from our elected officials. Because most likely, America can survive a season or two of bad political leaders, but I'm not sure we can survive a generation raised to think that corruption is clever and drama is strength. If you're a parent, your kids are learning how to act from watching you. Every time you excuse bad behavior in the name of your side, you're teaching them that loyalty matters more than integrity. My parents in their late 20s somehow knew this and used it to teach us kids what was right and wrong. And they often did it when the nightly news was on. When we would hear them speak about whatever it was we were seeing on the television, and then they would tell us what they thought of it right there in real time. Right or wrong, we got it from our parents. And I can remember we used to have these anti-drug commercials back in the 80s. They were on the TV all the time, and probably some of you may have heard of them kind of as a meme or a joke. It's, this is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Remember? Any time one of those commercials came on, my parents would chime in with a remark about not being an idiot and doing drugs, or the only losers do drugs. My parents, who I respected, were saying that. And you know what? I've never been interested in drugs because I knew it wouldn't be accepted by them because of what they had said and how they lived. They led by example. I mentioned this to my parents just a few years back, and they surprised me with what they said. They said that they had told us those things intentionally, with forethought, because they wanted us to hear loud and clear from them exactly what they thought of drugs. They were leading by example in our home. And my question to you is, are you leading by example in your home? It's an important question to know the answer to. And another one is this. Are you also being led by the politicians and billionaires and influencers you see and hear on social media? Are you being led in the right direction? Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But at least by hearing this, you might begin to realize exactly who's leading you and who you're leading. Please don't fall for the noise. Don't follow the freak show. Be the example you want your kids to follow. Literally be the captain of your ship and lead right. Leadership by example isn't flashy, it's not bold, and you're not going to be getting any awards or medals for it, but it works. It works in the home, it works in the workplace, and you can grow some very successful kids by leading them in the right direction year after year. That's how we do it in the military, the greatest military force the world has ever known. And it might just be the only thing that saves us all. Leadership by example. Good example. Hold the line, be the adult in the room, and never forget. You set the standard in your home and in the workplace by the actions you model and the actions you allow. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this Dadogram. Until next time, do the right thing, lead by example, and make sure that example is a good one. Thank you.